our last task here is to actually carve out the particles. And to do that, I'm going to jump back under the particle category, and I'm going to bring in a particle shaper. Now, this is a compound that is combining a number of other nodes here. You can see that it actually has multiple outputs. So I can actually take the results of this particle shader and not only use it to drive the density of an effect, so carving little patterns in and out, maybe the edges of a wispy cloud here, but we can also output particle color and an occlusion fake. If I actually dive into the particle shaper, you'll see that it's combined of a number of familiar nodes and some other unfamiliar nodes. So you've got some scalar to color conversions using function curves, some basic add functions, some clamping, and some multiplication nodes. But what you also see here as the kind of the meat and potatoes of this shaper is it actually uses a cell scalar pattern or a fractal pattern to get the look of the noise, in this case of the clouds, the wispiness or the fluffiness of the clouds, if that's what we want. So they're actually just taking the results of these, and if you actually see, we can see that the cell is being input into input 3. There's actually an intensity for input 3, kind of like a ramp for this value. And for the fractal, and basically we're taking these values, input 2, input 3, and we're multiplying them all together to come up with a final result. And that value is actually being output and being used as the density of the particle cloud. Now somewhere in there as well too, there's also some color multiplication that's going on. So we're taking the original particle color and multiplying it by the ambient occlusion. So the occlusion usually being multiplied over top of the particle color to get you the effect you're looking for, for carving out extra detail in the shadow areas. So I don't really need to go and grab the cell scalar and fractal shaders, although I could. They're sitting under the texture menu. There's the fractal and fractal scalar and the cell and cell scalar. All I'm going to do is output the particle shaper node. I can actually close this down here into the density channel, density shape channel of the particle renderer. Now right away we start to get a much nicer look. So we start to get the wispiness of these clouds, and we're starting to actually carve little patterns into the clouds themselves. Now if I'm not really crazy about what's going on with the colors here, I can change that. That might be a little bit too dark. So what I'll actually do is jump back into the ice tree, and I'll actually change the gradient color. So which gradient is a little bit too dark? Perhaps it's this one here. Maybe I'll bring its color up a little bit and maybe just give it a little tint of blue, and do the same thing on this one. Bring this color up substantially, and again just give it a tint. And even with this one, I'll pump this one up a little higher as well. So this is still pretty low. Let's try something like that. So we don't want too much variety in the point cloud, otherwise it starts to look a little bit funny. Alright, I'm actually starting to like that. We can actually work with the position of our light as well. And you have to remember that when we're actually using a light as a bounce light in this case, because actually our main light is coming kind of from above, we would probably want to disable the specularity. So I'll disable the specularity of this light. I don't want it to cast any speck into the scene at all, although it's likely not being picked up here. And I'll tone the light's intensity down a little bit, so I'll take it down to about maybe 60%, and I'm just going to pull that light forward a little bit. Let's just see if I can't change the shading on it. I don't want the clouds to be too bright, simply because we're obviously dealing with a snow type environment, so the clouds have to be laden and heavy. I could perhaps go back in and start to tune the render tree a little bit as well too. If I go back into the particle renderer, I can control the cell size. So again, if I want to balance between accuracy and look, I could start to increase the cell size. And so you can see we start to get a little noisy here, a bit too much breakup. As I increase the cell size a little bit more, we lose even more detail. So I'm going to lower that cell size to say 1.01. And then I can control the interpolation, which is going to help me blend even more.